are creating apps at the speed of business, trends that are disrupting application development. I know we've got people from, we have high registration, people from all over the world, so thank you for everybody for coming. I encourage you to, the format we'll do here, we're going to try and keep it informal, but we also want to cover quite a bit. And so we'll do the Q&A session at the end. So feel free in the chat window to post your questions now or throughout the session. We'll be queuing those up and answering them at the end. Any of the questions that we may not get to if we run out of time, we will try and respond back to via email. So yeah, with that, let's get started. So my name is Samir Ghosh. I'm CEO of WaveMaker. I have Anurag Parashar with me. He's one of our lead architects.
Hey everyone.
And so we're headquartered in Silicon Valley, and we're just going to talk about some of the trends we see in application development, some of the big ones we see around enabling some disruption. But first, and I know we've got mostly developers, I think, on this, but just to set some business context, for this presentation, we see enterprises facing increased challenges, right? It's hard to argue with these things. There's increased global competition, new disruptive business models. You have customers empowered with social media and employees with consumerized expectations. And there's a lot of studies out there that show, IBM's done a bunch of CIO studies, for example, that show the companies that actually had the best growth, largest return on investment, revenue, profitability, et cetera, are those that truly foster innovation through democratized decision-making. And the argument we make is that custom applications are key to that, whether you're gathering information from the field through mobile devices, capturing new innovative processes down at work group level or business unit level, automating those. Being able to create custom applications for your business is really key to fostering innovation, one of the key enablers. But having been in this industry for decades and watching application development, there are still some problems that really haven't gone away. And so what we're here to talk about is some of the trends that we see aligning now in the marketplace that we think really enable some disruption in delivery of custom applications within the enterprise. So the first one I'm going to talk about is this whole build once a UI. This is not particularly new, but within the last several years, it's all relative what's new. But if you do some, say, Google Trends searches on things like adaptive design, responsive design, you'll clearly see that within, basically from the mobile era, you'll see a huge increase in the interests in this area. So why is that happening? It's happening from two main drivers, as I alluded to. One is the importance of mobile devices. So people are accessing, more and more are accessing applications and web and things from their mobile device. You'll see here there are more mobile devices than people in the world now. But what's another trend that's also happening, like wearables, Internet of Things, is the increasing diversity now of the types of devices, right? So we saw mobile smartphones, we saw tablets. Now there's different size phones, different size tablets. You now have watches. Apple Watch already has 3,500 apps and hasn't really, it's just coming out now. Wow. So what we're, so this is all adding to the complexity. The other dimension to this is the whole consumerization. So in business, you look back. It's funny, when I was creating the slide, I looked at the BlackBerry screenshot, and I think, wow, it seems so archaic, compared to modern expectations, right, for the UI. So the other part is now users are very demanding in the quality of the user interface that you have to provide, even if it's internal for employees or partners. It's no longer just B2C consumer apps. So there are a number of challenges. So how do we determine whether we use responsive, what's adaptive, what's REST or responsive plus server side? You'll see coming up in some of these terms and discussions. Do I worry about making my responsiveness on the server side? Do I do it on the client side? Google just announced last week how now their search actually gives better preference to those mobile-friendly sites. So, for example, having different URLs hurts your SEO. There's a lot of considerations now around how do I do responsive. If I want to build once and do responsive, auto-adaptive responsive UIs. And then the other part around graphics design, what we're seeing in a lot of large companies is now these projects, all these app development projects, are requiring some design work. And that, of course, that requires additional resources, people, skills, time. A lot of companies we hear from are finding it hard to find good graphics designers. And in fact, this graph shows just, I think it's from Indeed.com, job trends. You can see a huge spike in the demand for graphics designers. So anybody looking for a career change, maybe that's a place to go. But actually, we're hoping to alleviate some of that at WaveMaker. And that is, is what we're recoining. The term RAD has been around for a while, rapid application development. And if you just think about what you'd really like to be able to do is build once and then have it automatically respond or adapt to whatever device that you're using, right? And then hopefully do that.
Yeah, I think one interesting thing about these auto-responsive UI is that with simple concepts like the fluid layout and media queries, you are able to accommodate maximum number of devices, because with fluidity you are able to probably have those nearby sizes.
Right.
And with media queries you are able to change the styling. So if you see here, the top menu buttons have been changed into
right.
the drop-down items there for the mobile, right?
Right, right.
So yeah, I think it's an interesting concept.
Yeah, no, it's just, you're right, because no longer do you have just a mobile phone. Now there's different size mobile phones, and so it's not just about developing to one layout.
Right.
It needs to adjust, maybe another 10% or something. Yeah, good point. So, and then the other part, if you want nice look and feel and professional designs, you want to start to decouple the various UI components. It's not just the display layer. You want to actually decouple these things, be able to skin and provide different look and feel, et cetera, and maybe ideally start with some templates, the starting points, but not be locked into those, be able to modify them easily. And then, just make sure, though, that, these things are all not proprietary, right? You want to ideally leverage open standards and make things as extensible as you can. So, yeah, so with that, I'll hand it back over. Do you want to take over the API?
Yeah, I think I can talk about some other trends here for application development. API being one of the major trends. It's actually not just a mature trend. It's actually giving way to multiple sub-trends around APIs here. So if you can see, the growth of the API is pretty evident from this hockey stick graph of number of APIs which are registered with Programmable Web. That's one of the most popular API registry on the internet.
Directory of APIs.
Yeah, it's like directory of APIs. And this graph probably is showing till 2013, but then it has crossed more than 13,000 APIs on that registry now. So it's on the rise. The APIs, the reason why APIs is such a huge trend is pretty much what you had in common for multiple devices. I mean, there are the data is being accessed from so many different types of devices. Adding to that, the Internet of Things now, trying to access a lot of data and functionality around a lot of different targets here.
Yeah, to build those UIs, you want to tie
Right.
back to it through a single API, and that's really driven the growth of APIs.
Precisely, and not just devices. I mean, even the partner ecosystems have benefited from
Right.
the growth of APIs.
Right.
You really need basically an easy, usable, rather reusable contract, which should be a little not really rigid but loosely standardized, which could really help basically you to get away from those kind of validation and getting stuck with those rigid errors out there.
And I know we're starting off with maybe this will be somewhat obvious to some of the folks here, some of these trends. We're getting into more of the later, the more contemporary trends coming up.
Right, right. So, I mean, of course, API, I mean, we are, most of the people are aware, it's like application programming interface, and simply to speak about that, it's a set of operations, input, outputs, and types around that. Not really new. I mean, from the time we started writing our code, the first thing that we write is API. It's just that with the invent of different level of exposure to APIs on internet, B2B times there was like SON, SOAP, package there. So it's not a new concept, but the modern API really needs to be very usable. Everything around the world, the developers creating apps, the API usability is of utmost importance. Your business may really be critically dependent on how usable your APIs are and how developers can convert into good applications around it.
Well, there's one aspect to that, I think, which is the sort of, I won't say crowdsource, but moving out the innovation, so that a lot of companies realize that they can't necessarily do all the innovation around their platform, and so they open up through an API, and then you encourage an ecosystem to develop apps around it. So therefore, it has to be very usable for
Right. Yeah. I remember like hackathons being conducted around, and I think we have a hackathon coming up ourselves for WaveMaker. So guys, see you at the hackathon there at Apps World. If you're around, next month. Yeah. So basically, other than that, one more important thing which is required from the modern APIs is the optimization of network traffic, like exabytes of data per month, which is being flowing around. And then, like, I mean, we have the projections which says it could be kind of being tenfold by around, say, 2018. So it's a lot of network data. It has to be, the API format has to be really optimized for internet. It should be simple to understand and should provide finer grain as well as the functionality level controls over the APIs. So it's very important. And then, of course, it has to be secure and access has to be controlled.
Especially if you're, now that you're opening it up to outside development, you have to manage security. Yep.
Yeah, and then you also need to make sure that it's like who's the right candidate, your partner APIs, or probably internally, right? So if you see around these needs, the REST API meets all these modern needs, and it actually is the most popular way in which the APIs are being accessed right now, where you have the finer grain access control with the help of a representation of every entity in the system. You have simple to understand concepts where the CRUD operations around these entities are just mapped to the HTTP methods, post, get, put, and delete methods respectively. The JSON format really provides an optimized as well as understandable format to basically have the APIs
versus large SOAP.
Yeah, I mean that's been so rigid, and like I mean I think other than B2B, people typically don't talk about it, right?
Right.
And that too because it's like legacy out there from a long time. Like probably losing grounds now. And then other important thing is security, where you need to establish the identity of the user using the API. And then if the applications are consuming some of the resources on your behalf, you really need OAuth to support for finer grain security out there. So challenges implementing APIs. I mean, we see like the proliferation of APIs around the world. We really need everything to be API-fied. I don't know whether it's a word out there or not. Everything needs a representation in this world. The Internet of Things, everything has a representation. Of course, software, services, and data. Each one of them need their own representation out there. And other challenge is that the consumption of these APIs is still a costly thing. I mean, you still need a lot of investment on that in your application. How do you integrate those APIs? So
it's like consumption in using the APIs. Right?
Yeah, right. I mean, how do you use it? I mean, so there are multiple glue to that you need to write, and basically write all that boilerplate code to get set up, right?
Right.
So and then basically there is how do you secure those APIs and provide a management around this is one more important aspect of challenges around APIs. So this is where I think it would be great if we have some platform which can get you up to speed and get going. So things like API-driven development. I mean, when you start writing an API, it shouldn't be an afterthought. it should start with API contracts, because that's going to define your interactions between different services, your partners, and that's what you need to live with for a longer time. So it's very important that you start with API-driven development. Moreover, like it would be fantastic if you can have those generated automatically. You have your database being created and you have your APIs ready, right? I mean, you have
APIs
your
to that database.
Right. I mean, so all the functionality that you're exposing through that could really be ready with APIs. It just you just need to probably expose it, right? And then other services like Java services, security, everything, every aspect of your system being available as APIs, so that you can it becomes really usable, the whole system.
So I don't want to steal any thunder here, but if you start thinking about the APIs early, doesn't that affect the architecture potentially of what you do?
So I mean, the APIs, if you're trying to define the contract at the beginning, if you think in terms of how the APIs would look, it would itself be defining your interaction. So basically, anyway, I mean, even if you are trying to design architecture, you are trying to first come up with the interactions, right? And that's what API could really drive very well for you.
Right.
It could actually simplify your architecture,
right.
in other words.
So it forces you to think about how all the various uses, right? Which is probably not necessarily a bad thing, right? And then, and I think to your point, what you're saying is why spend your time thinking about the syntax and trying to create all those APIs? It should ideally be auto-generated.
Yeah, I mean, what could be better than that?
Yeah.
Right, and then I mean, if you have easy way to test those generated or created APIs, that would be like even better. Other thing which could be really useful is some prefabricated application components written around the APIs, which could be used by someone as it is, right? And you just configure its inputs and probably consume it as a UI or whatever output of that you want to consume, right? That could be a fantastic feature to have. So
by components, it's more than just it's not just UI, right? You're talking about back.
Yeah, I mean, the ready-made components could. So if you see the challenges in consuming an API, you may have to come up with a lot of glue code to do the authentication. You may need to do OAuth processing.
Right.
Then you may need to write some reusable UI. For example, in this particular screenshot, I can show a Google map where you can place your output of one of the APIs and show, okay, how this particular component is reusable. Actually, one of the partners we are talking to, they actually need a Google map where they can just place their pointer and actually show the path on Google Map. So all these could be like real good candidates for creating some ready-made components.
You know, it reminds me, this is a good opportunity to plug our webinar one more time, but you know, at Apps World in San Francisco next month, we are hosting this hackathon, and Honda is a co-sponsor, Mojio is a co-sponsor. So we created some of these prefabs, I think, right, for Mojio?
Yeah, we are creating some of the
so that you can immediately sort of plot their cars on a map just by dragging the prefab.
Right. So yeah, that's the use case I was talking about.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. So and then like, I mean, once you have those generated APIs, you could define the control on who can access those. Either you want to expose them, or you do not want to expose them. Expose in the same application, access it just within your organization, or actually make those APIs public. And in case you make them public, if the platform can provide you with the components which can actually manage it, could create identity for the user to consume the APIs, provide you other supports in terms of creation of app for consuming it from other applications, right? All those concepts could really be very important, and it's great if a framework can actually provide you that.
Yeah, ideally they're integrated, you're saying.
Right.
The other important thing, so is you want to sort of at a high level be able to say, okay, I'm going to turn on this overall endpoint or this overall API, and then also you want to, on each call, potentially be able to say, I want to expose or not expose these particular calls.
Right. So on each of the individual operations and entities, you can define your access controls to who can use it, right? So I mean, I think that takes me to another trend, which is continuous delivery, and we have seen a steady rise in the continuous delivery in past couple of years. And so basically, the main reason why it started was because you are from the trend of the installed software to SaaS when you moved. The only thing which was restricting you is your own operations. How often can you actually deploy? And that was just the start. But it has become like a trend now, and it's like enabling you to have a good agile process. You could actually release very often. You can have functionalities released small, tested, and then basically verified if it really works. You can react quickly on the functionality that work or do not work. You can respond to changes with the continuous delivery. There are e-commerce companies who are actually releasing every hour or probably every check-ins, and then they are also validating their functions by basically trying them out with some part of their audience and getting a feedback, and based on plus and minus, they can actually keep the feature, remove the feature, replace with another one. So it's becoming really a very strong trend.
Yeah, so I think just back on that, right? So I think the key there is, what you have bolded there, your own operation. So there's really nothing. Previously, to ship a disk or download software was a bottleneck, and now to fix a bug or something, really, because it's SaaS, right? The only thing stopping you is your own ability to get the thing fixed, submitted, built, right, and released.
Precisely,
yeah.
Precisely. So, I mean, what are the challenges around it, Doc? I mean, the biggest trouble is, I mean, you have different environments typically where you're trying to deploy your applications, and you end up writing environment-specific scripts. So for your QA environment or for staging environment or production environment, you are actually writing custom scripts to deploy your applications in these different environments.
And this is one of the reasons for the rise of Chef and Puppet.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so this gave rise to a lot of custom scripts around this, and then there was rise of these configuration management tool, as you said, and even those don't solve it, right? Because there are different hardwares, there are different operating systems, different on these environments, right? So you end up still writing a lot of customizations around it. So it's not really solving all this problem where you create a script, test the script, and then release that script as part of a sub-release within your application release. And then this sub-release has to go on all those different environments, and it becomes really challenging when you're actually changing the configuration or you're installing a new software, adding a new component, right? That really makes it very different. You are introducing new dependencies. How do you have those new dependencies? How do you script those new dependencies? Right, so this becomes really a very cumbersome process. Most of the times, the releases are blocked on these release processes instead of your application changes. Your application is ready, and then they're not getting released.
So an example of that might be like Dev says my application's working. They give it to Test. Test says no, it doesn't work, and you go back and forth, and you realize that Test didn't update some patch to some app stack.
Precisely. Yeah, I mean those are some more cases where this becomes really important. So this is where we have Docker to rescue with portable containers. So you have a container, you have all the changes built and kept in that, and that is run as it is on the other environment with just a few configuration properties specified, right? So you just do this cycle of building the container once, and then do that, replicate that everywhere. But the only question which arises is a single container enough for me, right? So
okay, yeah. So just is it fair to say that rather than sort of duplicating and rebuilding the environment, you're kind of moving the environment around? Is that right?
Yeah, so basically it's a portable container which you can just ship to any environment, and then you can just launch it anywhere and everywhere. So there were technologies before like that, for example VMs, but they were not really so easy to do, right? So with Docker, you're able to build, ship, and run the application and then run it anywhere, right? But I mean, why weren't we able to do it with VM? I'm sure, like, I mean, there were different people shipping their softwares with VM, and even we were doing it. But we know the pain. I mean, to build a VM, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time to start a VM, and then the size of the VM. I mean, like, it's in GBs. You compare it with a container which is a few MBs of size, right? And the biggest advantage which comes is in terms of launching a container from a few minutes to some hour, you actually reduce it to a few milliseconds. So you can actually launch it on a web request, and it just opens up so many different possibilities for you.
Yeah, so these are reasons why Docker obviously has got
precisely,
yeah. I doubt there's anybody who we could have had a Google Trends graph.
Yeah,
but I'm sure there's probably nobody on the call who hasn't heard of Docker.
Yeah, I think Docker.
But it's come out of nowhere in the last year and a half, 2 years.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Yes. I think we have been there with Docker. I mean, we have been using Docker from the advent.
Very early.
I think it's like around 2 years that we are now using Docker. We started doing our first initial R&Ds with Docker at the time.
And we were contributing stuff back.
Right. Yes, we are contributing in terms of their data migration, other stuff. Right. We have some of the proposals out there. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it's a very lightweight process which has isolations. And then with technologies like control groups, you are actually making sure that a container is using what it's supposed to use, not going beyond it. And that way you are able to create those lightweight, smaller containers, portable and efficient containers. But then what are the challenges implementing Docker for your organization? So first thing is, as I said, I mean, Docker is providing you with those portable, efficient containers. But to assemble a solution around it, you need a lot of technologies. You need technologies to basically make sure that your components are talking to each other, the containers are talking to each other. How are they connected? How do they scale? Right? And how are they networked together? What is the way in which you deal data of your containers? Right? How do you tie the data with your containers up? There are technologies like Kubernetes, Mesos, and then there's like things like Flocker for the data.
I have a Google alert of Docker, and every day I get new stuff.
Okay, you don't get the Docker alert for the clothing company, right?
I get those are dwarfed now, I think.
Yeah, right.
From Brad.
Yeah, then there are other concepts like discovering the service, things like etcd-based discoveries, and then this console for similar reasons. CoreOS has come up with its own parallel container out there. So there are a huge number of technologies. How do you assemble them and start together to deal with the challenges like moving workloads?
You know, before you move on to that, I think just one added dimension to this too. I think if you look at a web SaaS company, you know, they typically have one application, one app stack, a homogeneous typical infrastructure, and so assembling those pieces is a challenge in itself there. But enterprises have diverse applications, different app stacks, hybrid infrastructure, and so I think assembling those pieces for all those needs becomes exponentially more difficult.
Right. And then there's a custom need to it. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So So basically, a lot of flexibility is needed. Something like Mesos, right? So you really need those level of controls for enterprises. That's true. Perfectly a very valid point. Yeah, so challenges like moving workload to Docker, how do you manage your software stack and configurations around it? As you mentioned, one of the points there, where to place them, automatic deployment processes, which would include more than one container. How the containers are connected, where they have data. In terms of optimizations, you may have to move them around, right? So how do you migrate the data along with them? And then orchestration challenges, where I think there are so many companies which have come up and provided their solutions, scheduling the containers, cluster management, inter-container communication.
So when you say migration of data, you include like backup and snapshotting, is that all?
Precisely, yeah, right. So basically there is backup and snapshotting, and also like when you need to move the container sometimes. So I'll be talking
resource optimization.
Precisely, I'll be talking about that up there on the resource optimization. That you need to move it around for placing it in the right place and probably not having it at all, right? So those are different use cases. So other than that, as we see, once you have Docker being used as your infrastructure,
Yeah.
You also need various other infrastructure needs which needs to be satisfied for enterprise IT.
Right.
There have been these like VMware, they have created a lot of infrastructure around it, but you need those things for enterprise IT, the role-based access control, taking backup and recovery of data, right? Yeah, and monitoring monitoring at different levels. You need to monitor your infrastructure, you need to monitor your patching and upgrade. Yeah, right. Yeah. So all those need to be coming as a whole ecosystem for you to support your Docker system, right? So then there is, if you can optimize the resource utilization, that would be like an added bonus. And of course, fault tolerance and scalability are other needs, right? And so like you can't compromise security out there.
Right.
So I think this is where I personally think that it would be great to have a Docker accelerator platform which could actually simplify these implementations for an enterprise and then meet these enterprise IT's unique needs as we mentioned and maximize the value for Docker for these enterprises.
Leveraging Docker for all it can do kind of thing.
Yeah, right. So, for example, I mean, first thing which I can think of is Dockerizing the workload, where if you have a usable interface.
An existing workload, existing application?
Yeah, I mean, it could be existing application. You have scripts for them already. If a usable interface can actually make you logically have those scripts, so basically different parts of the scripts in a logical way, if you can specify, it becomes much easier for you to integrate and create those Docker images and containers out of that, right? So if such kind of a feature could be availed, that would be fantastic, right? And then you could also make sure that these containers specify what are the variables they need, right? So in every environment, you need to specify different variables, including their ports, required properties, like something like Java Home, for example, right? So all those things you need to specify while creating these images and packages itself. But I mean, will one container be enough? I mean, can you actually do all the functionality in a single container with the advent of new architectural design?
For a single application or workload, you mean? Is that what you mean? For a single
I mean, even for a single application, I mean, you would need multiple parts. You would need probably, an example here is like a web server, a database, the other services you require, for example, monitoring, right? All these things typically are different containers which needs to be tied together and composed together. I mean, I'm just trying to give it a name, say application stack here. It looks very obvious to me. And if I look at the new way of continuous delivery which can be achieved with this is something like this, where instead of flowing just one container in different environments, you are now flowing an application stack which is more than just a container but a set of connected or composed containers. And then specifying the configurations for these application stacks in different environments, right? So basically this is what the new way of continuous delivery would look like with that. And I mean, when I see it, I mean, it could be as easy as selecting your application stack, choosing your target, specifying your environment variables, and then launching on that environment immediately, right? I mean, so piece of cake it becomes, right? I mean, once you have such a feature available to you. So as I said, the added bonus which you can get is resource utilization. We were able to optimize our resources up to 80% by using better density on our AWS infrastructure and using hibernation of the applications which are not being used. We are having a online RAG platform. There are a lot of users registering, creating their applications, and then deploying those. Going away and not using it for a day or two, but then for those day and two, we are unnecessarily hosting it, right? So what we do is we just phase it out or hibernate the application when it's not being used after a particular idle timeout. And on the web request, because Docker can launch it in milliseconds, just launch the new users containers and applications up.
Yeah, so I think that's really critical to reiterate. So we were hosting our own users' applications on Amazon, I believe, right? And so it doesn't have to be days, but if the application or the workload's not being used for 30 minutes or something, we hibernate that. And so and you couldn't really do that with a VM, right? Because when the user when the user tries to access that application, they have to wait minutes for you to re-provision that thing. So Docker allows us to then re-provision that up in less than a second. The user doesn't really notice. And I think it literally cut our own Amazon costs by 80%.
Right. Yeah, I think less than a second is still not, I mean, the millisecond response, like pretty much what I'll summarize. Right. So, and then you also need various other features, as I was saying, like monitoring features, showing the insight into what instances you are running, what's the infrastructure, what are the containers that you are running, and the statistics around your container utilization, what is hibernated, and if you see hibernated containers not using any of the resources out there, right? So all those insights into your monitoring and other enterprise IT features that are needed could be provided by such a platform. That could be fantastic, right? So other trend which I see on the rise is microservices. Microservices architecture has been around for quite some time. People designing it well and spending more effort and making sure that their application is ready to scale better. They were always doing that extra effort to do it instead of choosing a simpler architectural design.
From this Google Trends chart, it looks very recent.
Yeah, I think so. Now we see that people are ready to.
Really
yeah. So it's like it's now getting popularity, right? Which shows it's getting popularity here. And now basically people are looking at why this particular trend is important, right? But does that mean that it's easy? Let's look at that. Right. So and then of course this is boosted by the earlier trends that we discussed. Everything has APIs, the representation, and the continuous delivery has become much more mature than what it was.
These are enabling now microservices to be
precisely. So now the thing which was difficult could be made easy because these trends are really pushing them in a right direction. So if you see the traditional monolithic architecture, most of the services in an application were bundled together. They were all sitting in a single application, were scaled together, right?
Succeeded and broke together.
Sorry?
They would succeed or break.
Right. And so basically the shortcomings were updates and upgrades. If the application grows big, there are different teams working on different parts of it. One team's check-in is breaking other functionalities and it's not being released for so long, right? So you are not able to get truly agile with this kind of application architecture and really reach those continuous delivery.
It's a prohibiting your agility. Yep.
Precisely. Yeah. So it's easy to build this kind of application. This is how people have been building it. But look at microservices architecture, where each one of these services are synonymous to separate applications. You are maintaining them separately. This is where the contract, the API-driven development becomes so much more important, right? You have different services, different applications. If the contract is clear and defined when you start, it really becomes so much more easy to achieve this pattern and do many more releases. I mean, you can just release individual services as an application whenever you want, right?
Component. Because some people talk about loosely coupled components.
Right. So that's where you can see that, right? You can have services talking to each other here, and
right. So to reiterate, the APIs allow you to loosely couple these things, have an independent, and then the continuous delivery allows you to get these things, the components out there very quickly.
Right. Precisely. And then the other biggest advantage which you get is independently scaling these services, right? So you don't need your all your services don't have same scalability needs, right? So if you break them into different parts, you'd scale them differently, and that's what you need, right? And then like you are also reaching a stage where your databases can actually be fragmented and used by different services separately or together in whichever ways you want. This gives you flexibility around that. So what are the challenges implementing microservices? I mean, the major challenges that I see is architecting those smaller services. How do you define those services? How do you make those services available to other applications? And how do you ensure that those APIs are consumed easily, right? I mean, so this is the reason why it hasn't really become very popular, right? I mean, there's effort involved.
Yeah.
But what if a platform can simplify those efforts for you? You could just be going and catching those basically benefits automatically, right?
Wait, so, just go back. So some of the complexity here is the fact that now you have, you're breaking this monolithic thing into multiple pieces. So now you have lots of small pieces, right? So that's some of the challenges to manage those, and right? Yeah.
Right, precisely. How do you have the things like their releases or building and continuously, all those basically are things which we discussed with the continuous delivery.
Right.
So wouldn't it be great to have a feature where you build your application, have the APIs available, and share it with your other fellow developers at a central place, right? And the other developer can then go to the same place and search and find the APIs that he needs and consume them, right? So, basically, this is where you could see like what are the APIs useful to you, what inputs you need to provide, all the documentation. This is like the Saga documentation which we have integrated here.
Right. So I think what you're hinting at here is there's a part to this where if you're really trying to get to a microservices architecture, that's not necessarily just within one application or one developer or one team. Ideally, you want to share those things across the organization because now you have these loosely coupled components. Your graph is a kind of a simple one. It could really be components that are used by multiple applications at that point.
Precisely. I mean, that's the idea behind microservices architecture, that you are independently able to work on different applications in different teams. Yeah.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that a microservice can be used by one application or multiple applications.
Precisely. Yeah. Yes.
And that's hard to do unless you're making it easy to share them, right? Publish them, share them, find them.
Right. Yeah. Right. Precisely. So, and then a platform which can let you deploy this on an optimized deployment cloud, internal cloud of your own, right? Publishing the APIs along with your deployments, right? And if the importing and consuming those APIs are piece of cake, then it just solves a lot of problem for you, right? I mean, you want
to make it easy to consume them.
Precisely. It's just so yeah, and it's available to you. You use them in your application on different controls, right? So yeah, it's like what could be better than that? So yep, and I think probably
so I can have it's my turn, right? I get to okay. So right, so now the thing is, okay, so here are some trends, and how do you align? How do you take advantage of these trends? There are some challenges to it. I think we've probably already articulated that there's quite a bit of there's technology and there's some complexity to these things. If you look at the build once UI or responsive UIs, there's a number of choices and technologies or approaches you could take. If you look at APIs, it's more than just after the fact publishing an API, but if you want to really standardize and start to do an API-driven approach from the beginning, that there's some issues with that. And then things like microservices. Now the next progression is microservices, and how do you foster that in your architecture? It's more than just saying I'm going to do it. You have to actually make it easier to do that, which includes the ability to share those services across the organization. You need and then there's the whole continuous delivery aspects. Docker is obviously super popular, very powerful, but we know, because we're early users of it, it's not that straightforward just to assemble all those pieces. There's a lot of complexity to actually get it all in production, particularly for IT's needs, enterprise IT needs, and then you want to leverage all that it can do, right? So there's some challenges in getting all these.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of boilerplate code that you need to build to initially establish all these interactions between applications.
Right.
And this whole setup takes time to mature. I mean, if you ask anybody who's worked on enterprise applications, it takes time to mature all those setups.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the early innovators obviously are going to write that code, right? They're going to be the early innovators that will write the code themselves.
Right.
I'm always amazed to see some enterprises that have huge teams, maybe building their own PaaS, for example. But I think that becomes very expensive. It's hard to if that's not your business, it's hard to know what technologies to stay on top of and to innovate and keep that up with the times. So we bank on the fact that you're best turning to a partner who does all that for you, right? So we talk about, RAD has been around. I'm an old fart myself. I've been around, RAD's been around for a long time, and so we talk about RAD with RAADD. We're trying to coin that term, Rapid API Application Development and Deployment, sort of as the new RAD. And what does that mean? It means all the things we've been talking about, being able to quickly build once a really great-looking interface without having to be a designer, a UI designer, and then have it work on a myriad of different devices, even the new ones that are coming out. And it needs to be not only easy for a non-UI developer or even a non-developer, but also flexible enough to extend. One of the challenges is making sure the professional developer can add that extra functionality that's needed. And then, it also means being, again, we talked about API driven, so starting by looking at the API needs as you develop your applications, and particularly towards a microservices architecture and the benefits you get from that. And then the whole continuous delivery by leveraging Docker and simplifying that process, meeting the enterprise IT needs and maximizing value for out of Docker. So a couple of cautions we'll just toss out too. You want to make sure these things are on open technologies. It's all about the extensibility, vendor lock-in. You don't want to get locked into some RAD tools. It's so proprietary that you're locked into a runtime environment. Ideally, you want something that will run on an open technology, so you have choice and you're not locked in. Delivery options, there's
I think some of the RAD tools, they just won't let them deploy only on their cloud.
Yeah, exactly. Right, that's what I mean, right? So proprietary runtime, you can only run it on their technology. And then delivery options. There are plenty of industries that, obviously the cloud is it, but there are plenty of industries that will be slow or have certain things that have to be on-prem for keeping data secure, private data. Behind the firewall. So you want to have flexibility in delivery options. Can I not only use the RAD tool as a SaaS or on-prem, or also of course how do I deploy options for deploying the applications that I build. So this is probably obvious, but we'll leave you with the question: what if there was a RAD platform that provided all these benefits? Okay, well that, I think we're pretty much on schedule, so we'll now switch over to Q&A. Thank you everyone for listening. I hope people are still on board, and I would invite you to, if you're curious at all, take a look at our platform. We have a free trial at WaveMakerOnline.com, and we'll turn over to Nandita to see if we have questions.
I think one thing which I would again like to mention is our hackathon in the App Store.
Yep.
And just to mention, we also have one more category out there. Samir, probably you can articulate that category better.
Users?
Yeah, the business user category.
Yeah, so our hackathon, all right, good point. So again, when we're plugging on the hackathon, we are giving away some cool prizes. So we're giving away Apple Watches, drone, the new DJI 3 drone, $1,200 cash value for first prizes. So and with that, we're trying to do an unusual thing here, putting our sort of money where our mouth is, which is we can now enable, we believe WaveMaker enables non-professional developers to build applications. It also enables professional developers to do things more quickly, but we're inviting both then for this hackathon. And you can get information on that from where? Oh, from our website.
Yeah.
Just go to WaveMaker.com. Just go to WaveMaker.com and you'll see a link at the top.
Yeah, we'll send you a link so you know where to go and find more information and register.
Yeah, so Nandita, I think you're...
Yeah, I hope everyone can, So our first question is related to Docker, and it is open to both panelists. Are you seeing use cases other than continuous delivery for Docker?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. So yeah, the other use cases, you can chime in if you want. But I think one of the things we're seeing with some, particularly with enterprises, is not just continuous delivery, both for customer-facing apps and as well as internal apps, but also mobility. I think workload mobility, being able to move workloads from public cloud, private cloud, bare metal. What are some of the other ones that came to mind?
Yeah, I think resource optimization.
Resource optimization, right.
One,
Yeah, because obviously they're much lighter containers, so you can fit a lot more into your resource and your infrastructure. The other thing is, frankly, we see people asking about saving just on their virtualization licenses.
Yeah, sure. The next question is with regards to modifying an app. Can I do so from the WaveMaker, high WaveMaker level, rather than modifying the generated code? So it's a very specific question.
Yeah. So you're so you're using WaveMaker to create the app. Obviously, you can edit the app in WaveMaker. And I guess I'll just maybe elaborate. Hopefully, this is relevant. But the thing we strive for is we recognize that often the professional developer will want to edit it themselves, maybe in their own editor, and do a Maven build, and then come back later, either that person or another another person they're working with, still be able to edit it in WaveMaker and the RAD capabilities so you can edit the code and extend it without breaking the RAD portions.
Yeah, I think there are multiple aspects which are addressed in the tool. You have the UI, which you can design just by your drag drop and your properties. Around that, you can adjust layouts, use different layouts, choose different controls out there. There are backend services which are available to you, which you can readily use. And then, as Samir pointed out, you can write your own services and then interoperably work on your IDE, do your builds, and integrate with your continuous delivery tools. Also, if you have a different build, I mean, some of our customers are actually doing that. Just checking out the code out of our version control. Right. So basically, we also support this version control and the things where you can check it out and then just build it with your.
Right. So we support Git and.
Yeah, multiple of them. Yeah, Git,
SVN,
yeah, and Dash kind of. Yeah.
Great. So our next question takes us back to Docker. So how does Docker handle dependencies, assuming application stack bundles?
How does Docker handle dependency? Yeah, so I think Docker themselves has come up with some of the new features. They have Docker Compose and Docker Swarm, where they're trying to define the composition of these containers. That's still evolving. And there are other challenges around it where how do you schedule them around? So that's where Swarm with different network drivers is trying to address them. So yeah, and then there are other players in the same market. Misu's integration is present. The Kubernetes has container support in terms of their own architecture, where a pod kind of have multiple containers together, co-living, co-located containers out there.
We're trying to make this point in the presentation, but this brings it up again, right? Which is, okay, there are technologies coming out from, say, Docker or other third parties, and they can fill these various needs, but then you don't know which ones work with each other. So what we try to do with the platform is leverage the ones that we think work well together, solve the need well, and we then fill in whatever gaps are still remaining.
So we're on to APIs now. So what do you mean by API in context of rapid API app dev and deployment?
Oh yeah, so we're saying rapid API application development and deployment. What we mean by that is really the API-driven aspect to it. The fact that you're not just building an app, but you're trying to build an API-driven application.
Okay. And again, similar question in the same thought. Responsive really only applies to web apps, not developing native apps. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, that brings up a good point, right? We've been talking about web apps. We see the trend with HTML5 going towards web apps, and so that's where the responsiveness comes in. Just to clarify, we are also coming out with native app capabilities. But that is what we're talking about is web applications. Yeah.
Got it. So another question, could you give us an overview of how licensing works and some ballpark figures?
Okay. Yeah, so what we do is we license, so we, just so you know, we have a number of ways to try the WaveMaker platform. So there's a free open source version called single user, single developer desktop version, which you can download and run. The benefit there is you can install on your desktop and you can actually access data behind your firewall, build applications that demonstrate live data access. The team version, team capabilities are all available at WaveMaker Online. And again, that's a free trial. And now you get the team capabilities, the enterprise features like version control, etc. And then the actual platform that we provide is available as a VM appliance, which you can also get as a trial, but understand that needs to be set up on a virtualized environment. And we charge basically per developer. So there's no runtime. Again, we're not locking you into runtime. We don't charge by users of your application. It's really by developer. If you use our Docker-based platform to build your private cloud, we also there's a component around the number of containers. But it roughly starts. You can get 20 developers going for about $20K per year.
So with regards to the free trial, a question just came up. So I looked at WaveMaker a year or two ago and probably did a trial. Is it possible for me to start again?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, I would encourage, I'm biased, but I would encourage you to try it again. Yes, the question was, if you tried it a while ago, try it again. We've invested heavily in the current version, WaveMaker 7. So WaveMaker's been around for a while. We've been really investing heavily in a whole new version, WaveMaker 7. And, don't take my word for it, but we've been getting a lot of very positive feedback around it now. And so by all means, try it. You can try it. WaveMaker Online and the desktop are all based on, obviously, on this new version.
So another question related to microservices. Can you give us an example of microservices?
Anurag might have better ones. I was.
Yeah, truly speaking, I mean, one good example is our own platform, the way we actually ship it. There are multiple components, the load balancers in that. There are the containers for Studio. There are other architectural pieces like the platform itself, the monitoring components. All these are actually part of this infrastructure, and then these are all separate containers talking to each other through their APIs. And that's one of the examples, but I think I gave an example in the presentation itself, how you can break your application into those smaller services. If you see a major part, a big part of your application which is always accessed is login, right? So if that login is taken out as a microservice and scaled separately, or say emailing, for example, it's like one of the most popular functionalities, you take it out and scale it separately, you would be gaining so much more, right? So you're just scaling your mail and login separately as services.
When I use, and I don't even know if this is actually done this way or not, but I give an example like Facebook. If you look at a Facebook feed, you see one feed there, but maybe it's quite possible that, I don't know, that any video posted to a feed is served by a completely separate container, right, or a microservice than a normal post. And so if all of a sudden there's a big bump in videos, you could resource that separately.
Right. I think a lot of questions were towards the format of our resource definition language there. We are using the Swagger format for defining our APIs out there.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah. So I think just wanted to clarify that.
Yes, we're using Swagger for our API documentation. So again, we're trying to stick to
we can import the Swagger-based API.
Import, we generate and import. Yep.
Right, yeah.
Got it. So
maybe I'll just touch on the other technologies that we use. So it's all Java, Spring, Hibernate, AngularJS, Bootstrap. We use something called D3JS for data visualization. Again, we're trying to stick with the open standards.
got it. I think we have time for just one more question right now. So do you think Docker is suitable for all types of applications or workloads? Is there any specific type of apps that responds well to it?
Yes, I don't know. I don't know if you want to answer, but I think there's no. I wouldn't say any. Obviously, it's not every workload, right?
Sorry.
It's not applicable for every workload.
Yeah, I mean it's not applicable for every workload, but then the way the things are changing now with the flexible scalability, the microservices. And the things are changing very rapidly. I mean, there are old softwares like SAP and all this stuff. You can't run their databases here. But I foresee a bigger change going on. Even the data will be fragmented and used across different infrastructure. So I see that this trend is going to make a bigger impact where where the overall solutions would be created in a different way. So if you're saying Docker is suitable for everything, probably not now, but then going forward, it's going to change those formats. Is what I personally feel.
Well, thank you, Anurag and Samir. That was really nice. I think we are out of time. I thank everyone for joining us today. I have sent you all a link to join our hackathon. It is in your chat window. You can sign up right now. And we will be following up with you with a copy of the presentation and a recording of the webinar. And of course, information about our hackathon. So
yeah, do the hackathon. I mean, I have a drone myself. I love those things.
Yeah, and Apple Watches. It's going to be a fun event. It's a big, Apple is a big conference, and we'd love to see you there.
And we'll have our architects there, some major architects who represent that. So don't miss the opportunity to meet them.
Yeah, we'll have our most senior folks. Anurag will be there. Yep.
Yeah, I think so we have to have our engineering guys. So it'll be really fun.
Hopefully T-shirts.
Thank you. Okay, thank you everyone. If you have any questions, any follow-ups, you all have my email, so just please respond to me and I'll make sure we respond to you timely. Thanks.
Thanks everyone.